Welcome everyone to another NASCAR Heat Evolution video. Today we are going to look at a setup for Michigan. Now Michigan in this game, the way it drives is easily flat out. In fact, at no point during the straightaway or corners are you going to be tempted to even lift. That's how good the car handles here and how much grip there is in the corners. But before we jump into the setup, let's look at some lap time information. We'll start with the AI. At 105% AI or max difficulty, they qualify at about a 37.6 second lap. So at 37.6, the race pace drops off from there. So as long as we can beat that, we should be good. And in this case, we are well below that lap time. I was able to, with this setup that you're looking at now, run laps in the 36.8 to 36.9 range easily. So you should have no trouble defeating the AI at max difficulty. So with that out of the way, let's move on to the setup itself. We'll start with the shocks, and there are no surprises here. 10s across the board. There was no need to even think about adjusting the shocks. Again, you're going to find that this car at this track will handle beautifully, and it's almost like a restrictor plate track in the way it drives. So let's look at weight settings. This is an oval. We're turning left the whole time, so the left weight will stay maxed out at 54.2. The front weight in this case, I moved up a little bit. Generally, I like to keep it from 50.2 to around 50.5 or so. In this case, I increased it a little bit for stability. I've quickly reached a point in this setup where I was running the track wide open comfortably, and then it was just all about scrubbing off speed. And if the car gets too loose or too tight in the corners, even though you may not be lifting off the gas, it still can affect your speed as you scrub off speed. So the 51% front weight enabled me to keep the car very stable through the corners and scrub off the minimum amount of speed. Wedge is our familiar 51% that, again, seemed to work well here. Front and rear ride height are both at their standard minimums of 4 inches. Next, let's move on to the springs. In the front of the car, I use the maximum left front spring, which is 1,200 pounds, and a slightly less right front spring at 1,100. That helped the car by using a stiffer left front than right front. That helped the car on entry a little bit and without getting it too terribly loose on entry or mid-corner. Next, we look at the rear of the car. The left rear spring is at 400 pounds, right rear at 500 pounds. In this case, I'm using a very small rear spring split of just 100 pounds. Again, it's all about stability here because handling is not really an issue, so I wanted to use a smaller number so that the car doesn't get overly loose or tight on the throttle. Next, we'll move over to the tire pressures. Tire pressures, you've got some options. As with previous setups, you can use the difference between left side and right side pressures to affect the tire stagger somewhat, which will help the car turn more or less depending on how you use it. In this case, I used 25 pounds for both left side tires and 40 pounds for more right side tires. If you wanted the car to turn left more through the corner, if it wasn't quite rotating enough for you, you could always increase the right side pressures or decrease the left side pressures. But the 25-40 split seemed to work perfectly for this track, so that's what I settled on. Moving over to the miscellaneous settings on the right-hand side of the screen, we first look at the camber. As with previous setups, the left front and right front camber are both maxed out, plus 10 for the left front, minus 10 for the right front. Again, no reason to change those. Front sway bar, kept it at 1.5 inches because, again, the car was handling so good it didn't seem to really matter. Rear sway bar, as in previous setups, we're not using that. Again, I've not really seen a reason to use it to this point. Maybe we will in future tracks. Next is the track bar. Left side track bar comes in at 13.5. Right side track bar comes in at 15, which is the maximum value. As you can see here, there's about 1.5 inches of split in the track bar, and that is to help it turn off the corner a little bit more. But again, it was not a huge deal, so you can play around with that number. Brake bias, you won't need it until it's time to come to pit road if you run a longer race. But I kept it around 70%. Again, that keeps the car stable under braking. Grill tape, unfortunately does nothing right now. Hopefully it will in the future. And wheel lock and steering offset, not important to me here, so I left them alone. Gear settings, as normal, I don't really mess with the first, second, third, or fourth gear ratios. The only one I really pay attention to for the most part is the fourth gear, and I usually make sure it's at 1.0 unless we're at a track where I'm already using the minimum rear end ratio, and so I need to lower that even more. But here, standard 1.0 fourth gear, and the rear end ratio comes in at 2.94. Now I can tell you that one of the options you have to adjust the handling in these cars is the rear end gear. For example, I had used as high as something around 320 or 330 gear here, and that was really winding out the RPMs as I hit the end of the straightaways. By reducing the rear end to about a 2.94, it actually helped the handling. So if you really want to be on edge, then run more RPMs in the motor, because that puts more torque on the rear tires and really sort of slides the car around more. When I moved the rear end ratio down to 2.94, it really helped the car to rotate better through the corner because I was running fewer RPMs. So again, that's something that you can play around with on these cars. Trying to keep the RPM somewhere around 7,500 to 8,000. But again, it didn't seem to matter a whole lot as far as lap time. You may pick up a tenth, lose a tenth here or there, but for the most part, because we're running wide open, it didn't really matter a whole lot. So that's our setup for Michigan. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to put those in the comment section below. And stay tuned for more NASCAR Heat Evolution. We'll follow this up with a couple of laps around the track. And the first lap is about a 36.9, as well as the second lap is about a 36.9. So you can get a good idea of the line I was running.